Hi Will, nice to meet you. So we're out in the field today doing a bit of drilling. Tell us a bit about your farm.
Right, well we farm in total about 800 hectares. At 700 hectares of it is croppable.
Yeah.
And about 600 hectares is what we actually combine. The rest of it is in stewardship schemes. It's all heavy land, it's all like a boulder clay.
Yeah.
It's mostly drained where it needs to be, but generally it's still very wet.
Yes.
So cropping wise, we're fairly lots of different crops while I just lift the drill out of the ground. So major on winter wheat, but this year has been a disaster, so we've hardly got any winter wheat in the ground because we couldn't get it in last autumn. So we grow winter wheat, some oilseed rape, although that's being phased out slowly but surely because of cabbage stem flea beetle problems.
Yeah.
And winter beans, we still grow a fair acreage, so we've got around about 50 hectares of winter beans in the ground this year, and they actually look okay.
Yeah.
So we're quite happy with those. And we grow some spring barley. If we have a really bad blackgrass problem, we tend to grow spring barley, and that tends to clean it up.
Yeah.
Spring wheat again is a blackgrass killer if there's not too much blackgrass, so we tend to not grow more than one winter crop in succession.
Yeah.
It seems to be our way of controlling blackgrass. If we grow 2 winter crops, we end up with loads of blackgrass again. Brome is again a little bit of a problem, becoming more of a problem, maybe because we've gone onto zero tillage, or we call it zero tillage. Bear in mind that we do use a low disturbance subsoiler because the silt particles in the soil do mean that we end up against the sense of slump. So if we don't use a low disturbance subsoiler, which happens to be a stealth, then we tend to get into a bit of a trouble.
Yes.
So this was actually stealth last autumn. With the intention of it being winter wheat, but it just failed. So cultivations wise, we do tend to use direct drilling, but we tend to have to use, most years we tend to use a low disturbance subsoiler in front of the direct drill.
Yeah.
So you can't really call it direct drilling, but anyway.
There's no right or wrong way to do it though, is there?
No,
you've got to work with the tools you've got, and if your soil requires it, then that's fair enough.
So that's sort of the cropping wise. So there's no livestock on the farm, but we do put biosolids on to build the phosphate levels up in the soil.
So from local farms, is it? Or?
No, that's the biosolids from Severn Trent.
Yes,
so
sorry,
that's human biosolids. So that gives us our source of phosphate.
Yeah.
Potash is not a problem. We're almost mining it out of the soil, so we don't tend to need potash. So we're about a month late drilling, in our opinion, which is not an ideal scenario, but there we go. It is what it is. At least we're getting it in now, but our cut-off really is the end of April. By the end of April, if we can't get it in, we won't put it in at all.
Okay.
But then we've still got to live.
Yes. Do you use any cover crops in the farm? In your rotation?
Right. The intention is that all spring cropping has a cover crop put in the autumn. Yeah. We got about half of it in last autumn before the rains just started, and we just couldn't get any more in. So, firm believer in cover crops. They work really well, and it's I wouldn't say a legal requirement in the UK, but we certainly should be using them to meet our farming rules for water. Yeah. But we do actually believe that they are cost effective. Yeah. So we do use them.
So what sort of cover crops do you normally use?
We try and go cheap and cheerful, so we're using a mixture of linseed, phacelia and buckwheat as the main cover crops. Try and get them sprayed off just after Christmas. Yeah. Which didn't happen this year, but there again they didn't grow particularly well, so they're not causing us a major problem. Obviously this field is failed winter wheat. Yeah. So no cover crops on this one. In the oilseed rape, when we've been growing it low, I think we're going to give it a miss again now. We've been putting companion crops in there as well. So
okay. What companion crops have you been using?
Berseem clover is the main one. Yeah. And buckwheat. Yes. Obviously the buckwheat dies off at the first frost, but the Berseem clover is killed off by the chemicals.
Yeah.
Seems to work, but we're still getting too much loss from flea beetle, so we're going to stop growing rape again. We've stopped growing it for about 4 years, thinking that would sort it out, but it hasn't done.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
So with your cover crop mix, is there a reason you run that mix? Is it benefits there for you?
Well,
the soil?
with sort of hopefully, in terms of the cover crops, I mean the linseed is relatively cheap and cheerful.
Yeah.
Phacelia, I quite like it. It's fast growing and covers the ground very quickly.
Yeah.
Again, tends to die off with the winter, but not all of it. And then the buckwheat, of course, it's what we can't afford to do on this heavy wet clay is let us get too thick a cover crop in there that we can't get rid of before the spring. Otherwise, the ground doesn't dry out. So the buckwheat's ideal because it dries off. It dies off with the first frost.
Yeah.
So that's just a choice. We might mix and match. We might try some different things. We tried oil radish. I think it's particularly expensive and doesn't grow very well on the clay.
No.
So
Those things you can't get the root down through it.
So if we can't establish it, it's pretty pointless us spending all that money on it.
What started the journey into the no-till?
I suppose cost savings and actually belief that it's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
We gave up the plough years ago. We still own a plough. Don't actually use it, or haven't used it. But it is right for our soil to do this. Unfortunately, the weather's gone against us in the last couple of years.
Yes. So how have your soils benefited from going down to this?
At the moment, they haven't. I think we're still in the phase where it's still working. I mean, we've got to get the roots to do some work for us, and we haven't had the right weather conditions, unfortunately.
So how many years you've been doing it then?
Well, I mean, no-till. I mean, we started off with sort of using Simba solos and things like that years ago. Gradually went down to using sort of short discs, light discs, whatever you want to call them, along with a bit of subsoiling. Gradually knocked the subsoiling on the head as we thought we were getting better, but realised now that we do need to do. Yes. So we've invested in a low disturbance subsoiler. That does seem to work for us, and hopefully that's the way forward. I mean, this land is all drained. It gets mould ploughed about every 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
And that certainly helps. And unfortunately, I think with the amount of rainfall we've had in this last 12 months, most of this land's going to require mould ploughing and low disturbance subsoiling again this year.
To lift it again.
Which is a cost that is just something we have to bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's too heavy to try and combat it with sort of a cover crop then, with the right mix.
Yeah, I mean, what we'll do is normally we'll go through with the stealth and then put the cover crop in with the sky drill. If it's coming a spring crop, and the winter crops, no, we tend to just, the turnaround with growing quite a lot of spring wheat. Turnaround period is quite short.
Yeah.
So there's no chance of getting a cover crop in to do any good there.
No.
Growing, 50, 60 hectares of winter beans a year, that's sort of the roots on there do quite a bit of good.
Yeah.
This field we're in was out of winter oilseed rape. It wasn't a very good crop. Flea beetle hammered it.
Yeah.
We thought we got away with it, and it wasn't a particularly high yielding crop. But as you can see from the amount of stubble in the soil, there was a fair bit of plenty of greenery there.
Yeah.
To help out.
So you're finding the greenery's helping the biology of the soil and everything?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting about the use of fungicides and what that might be doing to our soil. That's probably a story for another day, isn't it?
Well, it's a valid point, though.
We're sort of cutting back. I mean, certainly insecticides is something we've never used an awful lot of. We've only used them when essential, and I'm starting to begin to wonder whether we actually need to use them at all.
Yeah.
But there may be years when we suffer if we don't use them.
Yes.
So we are certainly not going to be using insecticides unless they're absolutely essential.
Yeah. So you're cutting down the chemical reliance, do you think, on the other things slowly but surely?
It's about gross margin or bottom line, if you like, rather than actually getting high yields.
Yes.
And we get, I mean, in a good year, we get good yields.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when the weather goes against us on this clay, we do suffer yield-wise. But so I think the point is we shouldn't be spending too much on it because we can't guarantee getting the yield.
No. I suppose that's where the min-till also helps, or the no-till also helps, because you're not spending a fortune getting your crop established.
No. And we have basically, I mean, this 400 horsepower tractor basically, it's completely excessive to pull this drill with it, but it's the tractor we've got and we use it to pull this drill. We've got two 260 horsepower tractors which also can pull this drill and have done. But generally this one's allocated to this drill, as the other tractors are using pulling the other drill on the rolls, and one's pretty much always tied up on the sprayer anyway.
Yes.
We have a 6,000 litre 30 metre boom trail sprayer.
Okay.
And we're all liquid fertiliser as well.
Yes.
So that Neil is out on that at the moment.
How are you finding your fertiliser usage since you've come onto this? Is it improved or?
Difficult to say. I would say we're still using exactly the same amount of fertiliser as we were before.
Yeah.
In theory, because you're not moving the soil very much, you probably need a little bit more. You think you need more fertiliser because you're not disturbing the soil to release the nitrogen. But I think we've got to get away from that. We used to probably put 220 kilos a hectare of liquid fertiliser on of nitrogen with sulphur, and we're down to about 200 at the moment, mainly because we don't think they've got the yield potential.
Yeah.
So, but no, I'm not actually suggesting at the moment that we're cutting fertiliser usage. But fingers crossed we can do in the future.
That's the
particularly with the benefit of the cover crops. I think that's definitely something there.
The long-term goals, I think, isn't it? Do you ever use the 3 hoppers on the drill for these sort of things? Or?
Yeah. I mean, when we were drilling oilseed rape, we were drilling rape in one.
Yeah.
In one hopper, DAP, diammonium phosphate, in the other hopper, and we were putting the companion crops on with the third hopper. Brilliant setup, race. Worked really well. Once I got the hang of the box, it was absolutely fine.